Now, you may be wondering why, if we go back to the UV editing screen layout here, you may be wondering why, if I hit the A key, why am I leaving all of these UV islands overlapping? That's really a no-no, and we shouldn't have overlapping UV islands in our UV maps. Well, we're going to be taking care of this ultimately kind of all at once. What I'm doing is just going through and UV mapping piece by piece all the parts of the vehicle. And ultimately, we're going to begin combining those into one object, all these pieces into one big object. And then Blender gives us some tools, these pack island and average island scale, to organize our UV maps. So let me just show you what I mean here in kind of a smaller example. And we'll redo this as we go, but I just wanted to show you what I mean here. So if we select all of this, and this is all one object, if we select all of these faces, you can see we've got overlap here. So what we can do is we can hit the A key and select all of these UV islands. And as I said, you can see that these are overlapping. You can see UV islands overlapping each other, and that's not good. So let's select them all and go to the UV menu, and then let's click on Average Island Scale. And what that will do is make sure that all of the UV islands are proportional, the same relative size as all the parts are here in the 3D object. And then what we can do is we can come over here back to the UV menu and click on Pack Islands, and it will pack them all into this 0 to 1 space, right? So ultimately, this is what we're going to do for the entire vehicle. I mean, I'm thinking about making 3 different UV maps, 3 different texture maps for the vehicle. One for the tire and wheel, one for the overall vehicle, and one for the machine gun. And those 3 UV maps will be used to do our texturing in Substance Painter. Okay, well that's just an example of what we will be doing soon, but let's continue our work just UV mapping piece by piece. I'm going to hit the division key on the numpad again, and let's select the windows here, isolate those with the division key, take away the mirror modifier, there we go, and let's work on these. So for this, once again, we could probably split out that base piece with a seam right here. Control E, mark seam, we can do that. We can also select a couple of edges and kind of split these out a bit, open them up so it'll lay a little flatter. We can do that. There we go. We also want to split out the window part from everything else. So I think right in here is the window part. Let's take a look at it in wireframe. Yeah, I think right in there is the window. So let's go ahead and mark a seam there. We could also break these pieces out here and here and here. And let's try this. Let's add seams along those corners as well. Let's see how this works. I'll hit the L key and let's hit U and unwrap. Yeah, that actually I think looks pretty good. Let's give it that test material right here. And let's go over to the look dev and see how we're doing. Well, we've got some stretching here, a little bit of warping on the front here. The sides actually don't look too bad, but this part warping on the front is a little problematic maybe. We could also do a similar thing and select these edges for the window and mark seam and see if we can open up the corners just like we're doing for the other parts. Let's try that. And mark seam there. All right, so now if we select everything with the L key, and if you're hitting the L key and you aren't selecting everything, say it looks like this, right? It's because you've got the delimit by region here with the seam on, and that just means that when you hit the L key, it's only going to select the faces within that particular seam. You can press Shift and click on the button and turn that off if you want. All right, so let's try this again. I've got that whole thing selected. I'll hit U and unwrap. And yeah, you see how that allowed those corners to open up a bit right in here and here. And when that happened, it smoothed out or evened out the stretching here on the front. And that looks pretty good. Okay, let's go back to solid view and let's do a similar thing over here. I'll hit the L key and hit the period key. Oh, let me just hit the L key for this one on its own and then hit the period key. Now we zoom into that one. Let's select this edge just like we did before. Let's select these corners so that it'll break out and lay a little flatter like this. Let's split out the window from the rest right here. Let me see if I got that. Yep, it looks like I got it. Mark seam, there we go. And let's go through and select these edges as well, so those corners will open up. And we'll probably need to go in and do this in the window part too, huh? Well, we can do that. It's going to be kind of difficult to get in there, but we can do it. Let's go over here, get this one. And then let's get this one right here. Oh, right there. That's what we want. Okay, so it should look like this. Okay, let's give this a try. I'll hit the L key, press U, and unwrap. Yeah, I think that's okay. Let's take a look at the look dev here. Yeah, I think that's pretty even. That's pretty good. Now, if we want, we don't have to at this point in time, but if we want, we can select the whole thing, press U and unwrap, and that'll lay it all out without any overlapping or anything. We can change from angle-based to conformal. Actually, I like conformal a little better for these. All right, so there we go. We've got those. Let's hit the division key on the numpad, and you can see here in Look Dev the pieces that we've already UV mapped. Let's go back to solid view and let's choose something else. Oh, how about those hinges? We had talked about those. Let's get those going. So let's hit the division key, turn off the mirror modifier, and here we go. So let's start with something a little bit easier. This one looks a little more complicated, so maybe let's work on this one. And once again, we might be able to do one of these and then just duplicate it for the others. It looks like we might be able to select this edge and this and this and these all the way around here. Let's try that. We could also come on around to say this edge and add a seam here, and maybe let's add a seam here. So it breaks this part completely out. Maybe we should add a seam down here too. All right. Let's go ahead and select it all and hit U and unwrap and give it a try. All right, you can see where we are so far. Switch to angle-based. This doesn't look too bad except for this piece right here. We ought to split that out. And this is looking pretty ugly and stretched because if we come over here to our look dev right here, oh, let me add the material. Yeah, you can see that this is stretched, right? You can see that there. And you can see that this is stretched. And in fact, if we want to, we can come over here and go to View, and then under Overlays, we can scroll this down, and right here is Stretching. We can click on this, and we can see our stretching. So anything that's blue isn't stretched. Anything that goes into green and orange and red is probably stretched a little bit more than we want. All right, so let's work on this piece right here. Let's select this edge all the way around here and mark this seam. And then we could also select these edges so they open up, so the corners open up and it lays a little flatter. Mark seam there. Let's give this a try. I'll hit L and press U and unwrap. All right, so we've got that a little bit better now. This has been broken out from this and it's blue. That's good. Let's come over here and take a look at this. Now, we could do a similar thing here. We could select this edge all the way around here and right here. And let's mark a seam here. We should probably also select the edge around this extrusion here and even take the edges here and open them up like that. Now let's press L, U, and unwrap. We're getting there, right? So we've broken the extrusion out, and here's that front panel that we put edges around. Now this part here needs a little work, right? We could maybe take this edge and mark a seam there. Let's try that. L, U, unwrap. Well, that certainly helped quite a bit. But we've still got this thing. What is that? Well, that's this in here. And ultimately, I don't know that we really care a whole lot about this. But I think we should probably go ahead and split it out here so it's its own part. Let's take a look at it now. U and unwrap. And here we go. So that's it there, right on the inside. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter a whole lot because that's really not going to be seen. But what let's do is go ahead and clean it up by just adding edges along here. One there. And let's add one down here. And let's see how this helps. If it helps at all. All right, so now let's hit L, U, unwrap. And there we go. That looks pretty good. Yeah, and if we go back to the look dev, you can see that the UV test pattern is pretty much all squares. We're not seeing a whole lot of stretching. It looks pretty good. So in the next video, what let's do is let's begin working on just taking this and duplicating it to these two. And then what we'll do is we'll work on this part right here. And as you can see, it needs some work. So that's coming up next.